its fate is tied to the ANC at this point. The whole system was designed for COSATU to have a leg up over all the other unions by virtue of the connection. And I think whether they recover with ANC to collapse or not, I don't know, but they'll go down, they'll pretty much go down with it.
Can the Tripartite Alliance survive the decline of the ANC? One member of the alliance, COSATU, the Labour Union Federation, is deeply worried about the trajectory of the movement. Joining me to discuss is Sara Gon. She is with the Daily Friend online newspaper. So Sara, the COSATU President Zingiswa Losi recently gave an address at the ANC Lekgotla in which she bemoaned rising unemployment, the breakdown of state-owned enterprises, as well as the rise of instances of corruption within the party. Could you tell our viewers, what are your reflections on this speech? What does it mean for the state of the Tripartite Alliance more generally?
It is interesting because she's generally quite outspoken, and the fact that at an ANC NEC Lekgotla, she spoke out very firmly about and recognized the trouble that the state of the ANC is causing, and that they are being disconcerted by it, and presumably so is the SACP. And in that respect, that frankness is refreshing, because it is to some extent internal debate. It is internal criticism, and it's obviously intended. I think it's intended for the ANC to hear and for the ANC to do something about. I think the only problem is that, all the things that she wants done, deal with unemployment, deal with the economy, etc., etc. The Tripartite Alliance shares this sort of socialist-based principles that would go to their perception of what it would require to improve things. And I mean, we've said it often enough, you're essentially looking at a system that's pickled in aspic. It has very much a mid-20th century quality about it, and the lack of success of socialist systems and the relative success of free market and capitalist systems shows that if you want the results they want, which is increase in employment, improve the quality of the economy, etc., etc., they are not going to come through the sort of system that they want, or the sort of programs that they want. So I'm not entirely sure. She was very critical, but I wasn't entirely sure that it was clear what they think the solution is. On the other hand, I also think that while the COSATU is useful to the ANC particularly during times of election, because with the South African Teachers Union, they have access to schools as sites of gathering and electioneering. So to the COSATU, which is largely a public sector union entity, and the private sector unionism has shrunk considerably for obvious reasons. They need the ANC to survive for them to survive. So it is a sort of desperate mutual relationship that I think whatever happens to the ANC, the COSATU will probably just collapse in its wake. SACP probably too, given the fact that SACP has always done that sneaky thing of never really standing as a political party. It's always sort of made sure it wagged the tail of the dog that is the ANC. So I think it's an important message to go out directly to the ANC that they're in a mess, they're behaving badly, and it's causing problems. But I don't think they have any solutions for it.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
In her address, the president said that as COSATU, we must raise our anger and condemn the failure of our alliance partner to pay its employees since October. It is unacceptable. And she then goes on to say that the ANC staff were correct to put down their tools, and they must not be threatened with disciplinary action. Pay them what they're owed and do it now. So it seems that a critical question here is the financial state of the ANC as the ruling party. Obviously, the government coffers are also running dry, and that is impacting on public sector workers who form the majority, as you said, of COSATU members. So, I think it'd be interesting to hear your reflection on the role that money is playing in some of these internal conflicts.
I would agree with Zingiswa Losi that they're entitled to strike and withhold their work, and for which they shouldn't be disciplined unless it's an illegal strike. But the problem is, I mean, if you think about it, they haven't been paid for probably 4 months or more now. It's not the first time it's happened, but it's been sequentially since about August of last year. And there were all sorts of negotiations at the beginning of January, and there were timelines for being paid at the end of the month, blah, blah, blah. The ANC has run out of money, and it's all very well for COSATU to chastise it, but clearly the ANC is either not making enough from membership dues because all its other areas of funding have dried up and can't afford to pay them, or it's just not bringing in money enough on any basis whatsoever. And the fact that they, for such a long period of time, have been unable to pay them, it's an interesting thing, because you might see the ignominy of the ANC sort of eventually being sequestrated. And these are not highfalutin, these are not policy issues. These are not highfalutin goals or principles. This is the ordinary plain work of running an organization and governing it, or not governing it, as the case may be.
Yeah, so let's turn now to the policy issues that she raises in her address. And this is where I think there's a big disconnect, because on the one hand, she's recognizing all of the problems around the insolvency of the party, the mismanagement of state assets, but then she goes on to prescribe a number of policies which would, I think, amplify some of these problems. So the extension of the COVID relief grants, the unemployment insurance fund, the compensation fund systems need to be modernized, she says. The national minimum wage needs to be raised in line with the increases in inflation. And she also mentions that Regulation 28 of the Pension Funds Act must be amended, which seems to be tilting towards asset prescription as a way of dealing with some of the shortfalls in government finances. So that seems to me to be at odds with some of the more frank assessments of the problems. I think her solutions maybe are where she falls short.
No, I mean, the problem with the solutions, of course, is that they very much have a socialist base, in the sense that what they want to do is make more money available out of nothing, or very little, or a shrinking pie. And in other words, they need improvement in the performance of the economy so that money comes into the economy, so that money can be used in this way, should it be deemed appropriate or not. That I won't go into. But the problem is that this whole, it's fascinating. There's almost a naivety along the left, and that is the fact that somehow the main task of the left is to provide, to give, to support. The problem is that the countries do that too much and give too little space to the private sector to grow and flourish and find it an attractive option to do business in this country, limits the ability of your Tripartite Alliance to get that sort of money. So even if you to look at something like prescribed assets, and I know they're talking about increasing the VAT rate and the and tax rates, we know we're in a lot of difficulty. We've got a shrinking tax base. It has been shrinking and is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And you can increase these things as much as you like, but there comes a point where you're not going to begin to get what you need to simply support people without them being unemployed. And they're only going to be unemployed if you give them the space to create business and thereby take part in providing taxation to the government to do what it needs to do. So it's classically socialist, and I can't see it having any merit in an environment where there is just there's so little basis for getting excited about people being allowed to operate in the economy in a way that they know best how to do. In fact, if anything, they're going in the opposite direction. So it's like, you've been bad, and part of what you've been bad is the reasons why what we think you need to be good. And it's just circular.
And some commentators have been looking at this situation and suggesting that this is COSATU preparing the divorce clauses for the Tripartite Alliance and giving notice to the ANC. I see it a bit differently. I think that their interests are very much aligned, and that's why you see COSATU doubling down on some of these very statist policies, focusing on recapacitating the state rather than implementing the growth enhancing reforms that the economy needs. What is your view?
Yeah, as I said, they're both very dependent on each other. So they really need each other badly. So they can't really afford to divorce each other. They can have an argument and have a fight, like sort of recalcitrant spouses, but they can't, they can't actually afford to split. The ANC loses some level of organization and access to voters if they do. And of course, also, if they were to cut down employment, if they were to retrench in the public sector, while it would weaken the union movement, it would also mean that the union movement pulls away its support of the ANC as a result. I think what would happen is the COSATUs, unless it did something amazing, and I don't see it happening, because it's sort of intellectual heft has sort of become moribund, and it's been through its own internal fights 5, 6, 7 years ago. Its fate is tied to the ANC at this point. The whole system was designed for COSATU to have a leg up over all the other unions by virtue of the connection. And I think whether they recover with ANC to collapse or not, I don't know, but they'll go down. They'll pretty much go down with it.
Sara Gon, thank you very much for joining us on the CRA. Let's hand over to you, our viewers. What do you make of this abusive relationship between COSATU and the ANC? Will it end in divorce? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're interested in the work of the CRA, you'd be pleased to note that we produce a number of reports, we host webinars, and provide consulting services to our clients. There's a link in the description below where you can find out more. My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.